everybody, welcome back to another Arts Music Store Canadian Gear Guide, where we showcase the latest and greatest music gear available in Canada. My name is Fraser, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about the Tone Master amplifier from Fender, more specifically the Princeton side of things. I own a couple Princetons. I absolutely love Princetons, and I'm actually really excited to tell you guys about this. Now, before we get into it and doing some playing demos, I think the biggest thing that has been kind of missed in other videos is who is this amplifier designed for? Because I think with this is, when it first came out, it was seen as being sort of a, let's call it a more cost-effective way to get a Princeton. I don't think that's how I would bill it to people. Instead, I would like to approach you and ask you, the viewer, are you a regularly gigging musician? Are you somebody that has to play, let's say, 3 or 4 shows a week in 3 or 4 different locations? And you love the sound of a good tube amplifier, specifically a Fender, but you're really getting tired of lugging around a big, clunky tube amp, or even a little clunky tube amp in the case of an actual Princeton. Or perhaps you just don't have the back for it. I throw it to anybody, if you've ever had to play a gig in Toronto, trying to find parking near a venue is near impossible. So for the average guitarist having to lug their stuff 3 blocks up the street, that's a pain in the butt. Another thing I like to throw in is sort of an anecdotal joke. There's an idea here that a musician is just someone who takes at least $5,000 worth of gear and a $1,000 car to a $100 paying gig. That's a lot of stuff to be lugging around. This guy could be the answer to your prayers. The Fender Tone Master Princeton here is designed to essentially give you all the perks that you would get from a regular Princeton, and then also add on some other stuff that people have been asking for. So, to roll you through the features on this, first of all, this thing looks just like a regular Princeton, which is key. I think for a lot of stuff out there, when somebody gets something that's more cost effective, they don't like to sort of give away the game that you're buying cost effective. For example, you could have the world's greatest Epiphone, and unfortunately there's always somebody there who's giving you flack because it's not a Gibson. Or the same thing for a Squier and stuff like that. Save for this tiny little Tone Master badge down at the bottom, which you could pop off the screwdriver. This is, for the purposes of the argument in front of us, a Fender Princeton. And I really like that. All the controls are the same, everything works exactly how it's supposed to, but we get a bunch of bonus features with it. Let's run through some of them right now. First of all, I'd like to throw out to you that we have a standby switch. Typically, a blackface Princeton does not have a standby switch, which it's really nice to be able to just kick this into mute if you got to answer a phone call, or if you need to go quiet in between sets rather than waiting for your tubes to heat back up. This obviously doesn't have tubes in it. It's pure DSP modeling, but it does a really good job. And I think that's something that people go, well, if it doesn't have tubes, it's not the same. I think that for an amp that costs about 60% of what a regular Princeton costs, the sound is far better than 60% of what a tube amp would sound like. So this thing sounds pretty dang good, which you'll hear in just a minute. Something else I'd like to point out is that this amp weighs nothing. A baby could lift it. A very strong Russian baby could easily lift this amplifier. I think it comes in at exactly, 21, 23 pounds? Somewhere in that range. They have it written in kilograms. I know, as a good Canadian, I should know what the kilograms to pounds ratio is, but I haven't finished my coffee today. So you do the math, folks. So I think that's awesome for it. Something else that's going to be key on this that we're going to see in a demo in a second here is that it has a variable wattage on it. Now, if you're like me and you bought a Princeton, you've probably looked up some famous Princeton players. One of my favorites is going to be Mike Campbell from Tom Petty. And he claims that a Princeton should be your desert island amp. And if you want to get those tones that Tom Petty does, it's kind of tough to crank a regular Princeton up to full volume. Despite it being a small and only like 12-ish wattage amp, it's stinking loud, especially in a small room. This amp can handle that. It can push it through that. One other thing that I'd like to throw out on this is you'll notice I have no microphone in front of this guy today. It's because everything is being run out the cab sim in the back. So I think that's an incredibly handy way so that you do not have to mic this amplifier. You can go to your gig and plug it directly into the board. That's the meat and potatoes of what's going on with this guy. Let's give it a sound listen and let's give it a demo here and see what we can get for sound wise. So I'm gonna flip this puppy on. So we've now engaged it. You'll notice that the amber light is no longer flashing there, so we are live. To kind of kick it along with this guy today, I didn't want to come in here and be like, hey, this is a cost-effective amp, and here's a giant expensive Fender. I grabbed a Mexican-made Fender Telecaster here with the gold foils in it to showcase that, again, you don't have to be lugging $5,000 worth of gear to a gig to get a really good sound. This together, these two things come in at less than, I think, 2,500 bucks. So let's hear how it sounds. I think right now I've got it set up for a nice clean sound. Say that, and there's a little bit of drive. Okay. Volume back a little bit to 4. I've got the treble kind of halfway between 5 and 6. I've got the bass at 7, again with a 10-inch Jensen in here. You usually want to push the bass a little harder, and I've got some reverb running on this puppy. So let's see how it sounds if I was to give it like that. I think that sounds pretty good. In the key of F sharp minor. I think that sounds pretty dang decent, all things considered. How's that sound to you, Aaron?
Sounds great.
Sounds great. We're there? Okay, cool. So that's just to give you an idea. And also with this right now in the room here, I've got it running at 1/3 of a watt. This thing goes in a variable setting there from 1/3 of a watt all the way up to full power. I put it in 1/3 of a watt so that I can demonstrate what happens if I jack the volume here. So if I push this guy all the way up to get a little bit more crunch out of this. Hear that bridge pickup. That's the one I wanted, the correct A minor. Like I was saying there earlier about trying to get that Mike Campbell sound there, if you want to nail that with this guy cranked on a Princeton, again, at 1/3 of a watt in the room, I think it nails it. I think that does a really good job for the average person trying to recreate that. And I haven't used any pedals yet to show how this thing sounds. How about if we start turning the reverb up a little bit? Let's pull that reverb up to, let's say, 8. Let's see where we're at. So, if we need to get that classic surf tone, I think Link Ray would be quite proud. So that's a great sound out of it, or even if we need to pull off a little, oh, I don't know. Again, great sounding spring in there. I think that sounds fantastic. And there's nothing here that feels like, I'm not really here to, snub other brands. This is not an early 2000s Line 6 Spider amplifier in terms of modeling. It's fantastic. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. And I think it just, it delivers exactly what it's trying to if you're in that clientele. You want a lightweight amp, you want to save some bucks, you don't want to have to worry about tubes breaking, but you need something that you can show up to the gig and convincingly put this stuff forward. Much like a Mexican-made Fender versus an American-made, I'll throw it to everybody. I regularly play with Mexican-made guitars at gigs because I know I'm probably gonna have to put them through the paces and beat them up a little bit. And never, not once, has anyone in 400 plus gigs gone, that definitely sounds Mexican. And also to go along with that, the tremolo that we have built in here sounds pretty much just as good as the real one. So I got the speed at about 3. I've got the intensity pretty much maxed on here. Let's see how it sounds with a nice big A chord. Kind of dig that. Again, delivers exactly what it's supposed to. Let's see what it sounds like with some pedals. So for this part, what I've decided to hook up is just a classic Boss blues driver. I've got the gain at about 2 o'clock here, the levels at about 11, and the tone is just pulled back a little bit. Again, my clean tone, classic clean. Let's flip this puppy on and see what she can do. Tonic fans out there? I don't know, I just really dig that song lately. Guys, that pretty much sums up this amplifier. I did have some help from a wonderful Fender Telecaster loaded with gold foils here, as well as this Boss blues driver. Other things that you can check out if you head online to our website, www.theartsmusicstore.com. But quite frankly, I have been really impressed with this amplifier, and I have to admit, rolled into it as a skeptic. I was like, how good can it possibly sound without tubes? The answer is pretty darn good. The other thing is you don't have to go with just this model. There's pretty much everything across the Tone Master range lining up with any presently available amplifiers, save for a select few, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were on the way. So if you are looking for a deluxe reverb reissue, or you're looking for something loaded with 212s, that stuff exists and it sounds amazing. But you don't have to take just my word for it. Come on down to the store, plug yourself in, try out some Fender Tone Master reverb stuff. I've been Fraser. We'll catch you on the next episode.